radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right, welcome everybody. How you doing? Today is Thursday. Today's Thursday, December 15th, 2022, and our guest tonight is Jim Harold, of course, the host of the Paranormal podcast. And other things, he's been a full-time podcaster since 2012. He's been in radio for, I don't know, probably close to 20 years now, and a true professional. And all of his links, JimHarold.com, JimHaroldPlus.com. Jim Harold is the paranormal host of Everything That We Know and Love.com. Great TV podcast.com. Everything is below. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only, and my good friend, Jim Harold. Jim, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. All the holidays to everybody, and good to be with you. And thank you for the invite, and looking forward to talking for a while. And you said you wanted to get inside my head. So I'm like, oh, what is Jimmy going to ask me? So I guess we'll find out. But good to be here.
You know, here, I'm actually going to start with something tonight, Jim, that I didn't plan. And I love this, which is, I want to talk about you and the world of the paranormal and your life and career. Because you've got millions of downloads and you've got, a vast audience, but you have guests on. And you're going through stories and people's experiences, but you don't talk about yourself, and I think there's a mystery there. and I know a little bit, and I thought it would be a lot of fun to do that tonight for everybody. And we'll make it we'll memorialize your life tonight and make it part of the historical record. But before we get to that, you are a true professional. And tonight, right before the show, everybody, Jim, I was just thinking about our conversation, wandering into my studio with my coffee and thinking about the conversation that we just had. And so everybody, Jim and I weren't talking about ghosts this afternoon. We weren't talking about the paranormal or his show or any. No, we were talking about our love and affection for Megami Studio Wire. That's a professional. And so you care about the way you sound. You care about the way you are presented to everybody. Mm-hmm. And these are things that I think get lost in the mix today with the world of podcasting and live streaming and the ease of it to get it all done. It's a lot of it's, for most, it's a pretty simple process. But for you and I that go back decades into the audio and radio and entertainment world, we approach this a little bit differently. And you're not going to let that go, are you?
No, I always try to get better. And to be honest with you, even if I listen to a show I did 2 or 3 years ago, my ears bleed a little bit. I'm kind of like, ooh, I could have done that better. I could have done this better. So I'm always trying to get better because there's always new people coming on the scene, right? There's always friendly competition, but competition. There's always new people coming on. We, as well as I do that we are trying to get people to listen and watch our content, and so are the big guys. So anything that I can do to meet that standard and to put out as quality of a product I can, that's what I want to do. There's only so much you can do with this, but I do everything I can.
I remember this was a few years ago, and you had gotten a new Neumann microphone, right? TLM.
Yeah.
And your excitement about it. And I was just as excited as you. Well, Neumann is Neumann, right? It's tippity top. There's that. But for most, that just blows right past them. They don't have any idea what you're referring to.
Right.
But for me, I was like, man, you go, Jim. You go. And that's what is important here. And so Jim and I, I'm going to do what we were doing earlier, right? Jump off the mic real quick. So for everybody out there, Mogami, this is Mogami. That's the Mogami logo that you see on something. That might be upside down. But anyway, that's Mogami. This is a Mogami headphone extension cable. My whole studio is Mogami. And somebody just posted, check this out. You ready? You ready for this, Jim?
Yep, I'm ready.
This is going to make you cringe. You ready?
No, Hadley, God love you, but no.
No. No. And so, yes, I take great care to make sure that my wiring is perfect. I do that with Mogami. I have a pile of just I have microphones, okay? I have microphones, and I am constantly, trying to perfect. What is it?
Yeah.
Right now I'm using an RE20, EV. But
industry standard.
But this has been changed, and I've floated through, and I'm always I don't rest. I'm not going to.
I agree.
Yeah, kind of like a shark in water, right?
Yeah, you have to keep, and not only the audio, but I try to think how to do things differently with the content and maybe how we can improve. And I always like to think it's getting better, because I think if you stagnate, you die. And sometimes you try things and they don't work. But I think as a content creator, you've got to keep trying to make it fresh. You've done that yourself recently with some of the changes and evolution you've gone through. I think that's a sign of somebody that's engaged, because once you get to a point where you're just doing the same exact thing over and over and not adding a little wrinkle, whether it's the equipment or the presentation or the structure, whatever it is, once you stop doing that, that's kind of a sign that you're on the way out eventually.
And what challenges me, and you had made this comment to me last week. You said, I saw that you've made some changes. Good for you. And that's other broadcasters to a point. I don't have it's a time management thing. I don't watch everything that's out there. It's impossible. But what I do notice is, when you watch these little clips, YouTube, and it could be about anything, right? It could be electronics or technology or knitting or whatever it may be, unboxing videos and stuff. You look at the level of accomplishment technically, not only in the presentation and how people are speaking, but it is the lighting, it is the camera, it is the background, and the quality of the audio and the edits and the graphics, where this standard is lifted, man. You and I, two old farts, man, we can't let we've got to constantly perfect and move forward.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. That's exactly right. And it's kind of fun. It keeps it fun. I mean, if I were just doing exactly the same thing and never saying, okay, well, I'm going to add this, or I'm going to subtract this, or I'm going to tweak this, that makes it fun. Because, see, you talked about my history. I used to work in radio, but I worked on the business side. But I had a ton of ideas. But the problem was nobody cared. I remember being in a meeting it was a teleconference at the time. It wasn't video. We weren't Zooming, but this is about 2010. And I was on the line with the top digital people at CBS Radio, which became Entercom, which has become Odyssey, but CBS Radio, big deal, owned by the same CBS that we all know, the Big I, the Tiffany Network. So I worked as a digital sales manager for a cluster of stations in Cleveland, 4 stations. And we would have weekly calls and go around and talk about different things. And I said to the top guy, their digital program, about 2010, I said, you guys really need to get on the podcasting wagon. This is going to be big. And they said, oh, that's very nice. It's very nice. How many banner ads did you sell this week? And, so getting back to the point is that I came from working in traditional broadcasting behind the scenes for on and off 20 years. It wasn't fully 20 years. There were some gaps in there, and I did some non-media stuff. But for almost 20 years, I was working for media companies. And it was so frustrating to go down the hall and have an idea, and they just said, we don't really care. So now I'm the chief. And if I have an idea, I try it. And guess what? Some of them don't work, and some of them work great. And but I've got that freedom, and I love it.
When I was, when I just finished school for broadcasting, and 2008, 2007, 2008, right in there. And at that age, I decided I'm ready to get out of the music industry. I want to go and do what I've always wanted to do, chase my bliss, and start this radio career. Well, at that time, right as I was making the shift, the economy collapsed, 2008. We all know what happened.
Yep.
And the media industry took a huge hit. Radio and television, advertisers. There was no money, right, anywhere. And suddenly, I thought I was going to cruise into. I had things set up that I was going to cruise into this radio career and start things off. Well, that all stopped. But at that time, YouTube was brand new, right? There was no live streaming. It didn't exist. The word podcast didn't happen for a few years. That wasn't even a word yet. And I was sitting on this equipment, and I had a computer, and I knew a little bit about the internet, a little bit about HTML. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to start a radio station, and I'm going to do it online. Nobody had done it before. And I was frustrated with different networks, just telling me no. Right now we're not hiring. And I just graduated. I was so I looked at the computer, and I thought through this and said, I'm going to try. I pulled it off. Build a website that would stream audio. All right. So I HTML'd myself to death. But before I did that, I went to my 2 daughters. And at the time, they were probably 8, 9 years old. They're 27 now. So maybe they were 10. And it was at a Sizzler. And I said, okay, I got to ask you guys a question. Yeah, what's up, Dad? I want to start an internet radio station. What do you guys think? Do it. Why? The internet, they got at the age of 10, right. And I thought, okay, so if I've got the support of my daughters, they get it, they see what I see. I'm going to do this. So jimmychurchradio.com, that was started in 2008. And it took me about 6 months, building and testing, and it finally worked. And that's where Jimmy Church Radio started. Podcasting and live streaming and whatever radio, internet, that all came later.
Well, podcasting was around, actually. It started in 2004. I started in 2005, not full time. But I mean, it really didn't hit. You're right. It didn't hit in a large way, but it was out there in the fringes, and I was on the fringe. So I started in 2005 as a hobby. I was spending $20 a month. I had a ratty Windows computer. My first mic I used for my first shows, and they're still up. And I remember my first guest, I think, was Lloyd Auerbach the great parapsychologist, which was awesome. Then Stanton Friedman, my first two guests.
Mine too, by the way.
Wow. The thing was, they were like, "What's a podcast?" But because nobody knew what it was. And I said, I would tell people on podcasts. And at that point, it was just Jimmy for me. I was working at a radio station at the time, and I always let the management know. And I think their attitude was, this is nothing. Who cares? You do whatever you want to in your free time. I didn't go on and say anything negative about the stations or never even mention the stations I work for. But 2005 to 2012 was just kind of, 2005 to 2008 was dabbling. I'd do a show in a couple months. 2008, I got really serious. 4 years later, I was like basically working 2 full-time jobs. And I told my wife, something's got to give. Are you in with me on trying to do this full-time? And bless her, she said yes. And I mean, you talk about support, much like your family, getting that family support is so important, because without it, I would never have been able to do what I've done. And again, I'm a mid-tier podcaster. I'm not Joe Rogan, okay? But I make a living. I enjoy what I do. There's a decent amount of folks out there who seem to enjoy it too. So it's a good life.
When did it? I'm about to go deep back into your life in just a second, but was there a moment where you're plugging along, and then all of a sudden, right, things started to take off? Was there a moment when that happened?
Well, I was one of the early people starting a Plus Club, a premium offering, which I still have to this day. And I kind of cobbled it together with WordPress and these different plugins and stuff. And in 2011, I opened that up. I think it was February of 2011. And I announced it and so forth. And the first day I got 200 signups. And that was the day that I said, aha, there's something here, because people are voting and being very generous and very nice by signing up to my Plus Club. And I didn't have anywhere near the content that I have now. If you in my Plus Club, you get access to over 2,000 episodes. It was not 2,000 episodes at that time. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, people were very supportive, and I am just so thankful for my audience as well as my family. But that was like the inflection point, not that it was like, life-changing money or that I could quit my job that day. But it was like, if I work towards this, this can be successful.
Yeah. So staying on that, when you feel that you've taken the turn, do you feel that at that point that you're doing something right, or that it's the other side, that people are resonating with you? It's not necessarily what you think, but you're making a connection.
Well, I think it is a connection, because I don't really make a big deal of my opinion on the shows. I think that there's a commonality that people realize. This is, for me, people say, oh, he's in a business. And yeah, it's my business. But I've started following the paranormal in the 1970s when I was in elementary school, watching Leonard Nimoy and In Search Of. And it's something I am fascinated to this day. I am still fascinated by it. I had a conversation the other day with a gentleman by the name of Bernard Beitman. Perhaps you've spoken with him.
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And he talked about, he has a new book out, Meaningful Coincidences. And we got in deep about coincidences and synchronicities. And I was having fun. And any job that you can do every single day, and you've been at it for 17 years talking about a topic and related topics, but they're all related. I feel they are, at least. And you're still excited about it. That's a pretty good job. And I think people sense that I have a real interest in these subjects, a real fascination. They have a fascination. So I think it's that common ground. I've never claimed to be an expert. I'm not an expert. There aren't a lot of experts. Real experts. Somebody like Rosemary Ellen Guiley. She was an expert, as close as you're going to get. The late great. But I'm a guy who's asked a lot of people a lot of questions and heard a lot of answers and have some opinions, but people seem to resonate with that.
If we back up, and when you say that, as a kid you were interested in, Leonard Nimoy, and you know what, you don't have a claim to that story. We all have that same story in search of. You just got me thinking. The intro to that show would get me pumped, right? When I was just incredible. That what the Loch Ness monster, whatever, it was
strange disappearances,
was,
blah blah blah. These are the mysteries we will explore.
Yeah. Oh man, I loved it. Well,
and the music was perfect.
Perfect. It was perfect. And so, were you strange growing up? Were you dressing in black?
No,
did you stand out?
Not really. I was kind of bookish. Always loved sports. A lot of kids who were like really good in school and stuff don't love sports. Wasn't great at it, but loved it. But it was so funny because the elementary school I went to, so many people that I went to school with continue some kind of fascination or some kind of business or something to do with the paranormal. And it was maybe something in the environment we grew up in. You wanted to get in deep? Well, here's a little bit of deepness. I grew up in the inner city of Cleveland. My dad was a steel worker. You could look out if you've seen that movie Christmas Story, which is one of my all-time favorites, which was partially shot in Cleveland, you see those older houses. That's kind of similar to the kind of house I grew up in. It was a very working class area. And I could look out my front door and see what they call a BOF, blast oxygen furnace, with fire belching out. And maybe it's something about that and I could look out my side window and see railroad cars. So maybe it was something about that environment and the kids in that neighborhood that kind of lend itself to the spooky and the strange, because it was kind of like a spooky and strange place to grow up. And I've always wondered about that because so many of the people that I still keep in contact via social media and things, one live streams and is kind of like a modern day movie horror host. Other people do like crafts and things that they sell, and they're all around spooky stuff. And I just think that's really interesting. And maybe there was something in the water. I don't know.
Was your house haunted?
No. Not that I'm aware of.
Grandparents?
My grandparents, are you asking me about my grandparents or about
their house? Oh, your grandparents are.
Oh, not that I'm aware of. No, but I have two great family stories that also may have sparked my interest in the paranormal. One would happen to my dad and my uncle, and the other one happened to my dad and my mom. Would you want to hear one of those?
Let's go, Jim.
Okay, all right. So the first one is one that happened to my dad and uncle. Now, my dad's still with us. He's 87 years old. This probably happened around 1960, I would say. He and my uncle, who was of a similar age, and they were two, in their day, they played football. They were big guys. One was 6 foot, one was 6'2", big burly kind of guys. And when they first went to Cleveland, they lived over a bar. So anyway, there was a picture over the bar of like this old guy, I guess, or there was a picture of him who had passed, who used to come into the bar all the time. And my dad said he even bought the guy a drink now and then. So one night my dad is asleep and they're both in this apartment. As best I never saw the apartment. It was before my time. But as best I understand, it was probably like 2 rooms and a little kitchenette or something. My uncle was in one, my dad was in the other. They're both asleep. My dad wakes up and he sees somebody standing over him and smiling. And it's that guy, the dead guy. So my dad, probably about that point, 25 years old, like a big guy. He was a muscle-bound guy. He was kind of a scary guy when I was growing up because, he was pretty tough. Anyway, he takes a swing, and he starts yelling out and stuff that I won't say on the broadcast. And my uncle's like, what in the blah, blah, blah are you yelling about? What's going on? Because they were both originally from West Virginia. And and my dad said, this guy was in here. I swear he's in here. I said, somebody's in this apartment. And they're looking around, and there's a way, and my uncle's like, you're just dreaming, you're whatever. About 2 weeks later, my dad's asleep. My uncle's asleep. My uncle wakes up. Somebody's standing over him smiling. He's bigger than my dad. He swings. Nothing here. There's somebody in this apartment. And my dad laughed. He said, you saw him too. So, and that's one that I heard since, Jimmy, I can remember. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. Whatever my age of recognition was, I've heard that story. The story has never changed. My parents were not, and my uncle, who was like a parent to me because he lived with us, he was like a second dad to me. They were not people who would sleep with pyramids under their bed. They would not trying to get into the, the oneness of the universal consciousness. They were not paranormal investigators. They were steel workers, salt of the earth, working class folks. And they never changed their story. And that's the thing that appeals to me about Campfire, the Campfire show I do, Jim Harold's Campfire, is people like that call in. Many people say, nothing else ever happened to me. But they say, I know what I saw, and this is what happened to me. And I almost wonder subconsciously, that's how that show came to be, hearing those kind of stories. I've got another one for you, but I'll let you comment.
But here's the thing. When you're 5 and you hear that from your parents, your family, your uncle, right? This cements or helps cement the mindset that the world is not, black and white. It's not necessarily what we're told that it is.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly the way I feel to this day. The one thing I say, Jimmy, people will say, well, what are your theories or what do you think? And I'll say, A, I'm more confused than I've ever been. B, I'm more convinced that something's going on. And C, I think reality is far stranger and more complex than we understand. I think I told you this, but I think about it like you walk up to this old English manor, you walk in the door and there is a library, one of those big old beautiful English libraries, like you'd see in Downton Abbey or something, but the door's locked. And you could see in through the keyhole where they put the skeleton key, and you can see it's a library, and you can see there's books, but you can't see how many books there are. You can't tell what language they're written in. You don't know how many pages they have. You don't know what's written on the pages or who wrote them. That's kind of how I view reality. We just see a tiny sliver of what's going on.
The journey, I don't make this show about me. I would like to, but what I do find interesting is that I find myself commenting more and more about time travel. And I you know what? It may be real. I believe that it probably is, but I don't know if I would go back and change anything, because the journey on how I am here, if I go back, then something is altered. And I always knew that I would be here doing this with you, Jim, one day, right? And that's the path. Did you have the same feeling? You went through your journey, all right, in the radio business and the business side of things, but look where you are today. Did you feel in your bones that this is where you would end up?
Well, I mean, in a way, this didn't exist back then when I started, because I went to college for broadcasting and everything. And my whole plan, I never planned to work on the business side of media. I had no interest in it. I remember interning at a place, a cable company. I had won some kind of scholarship or something, got a paid internship. It was pretty cool. But I got to work in the sales department. I'm like, these poor schlubs. This is horrible. And then I ended up working in it for years, which actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise, by the way, might I say. But the point was, when I went to school, I fully believed that I would be in front of the camera or in front of the mic, one way or the other, doing something. But then when I ended up on the business side, I thought, oh, all is lost. That's, just a pipe dream, and that's something that'll never happen. And I kind of focused on trying to advance in the business side of things. And when podcasting came around, I thought, well, at least if I can never make a living at this and, never be on TV or anything, I can do this little thing and it'll be fun, because I love the paranormal. I love broadcasting, or podcasting in this case. But I think there was a time that I really lost faith. I really did. And that's something I would say to younger people, and I say it to my daughters, it's like, don't lose faith because you don't know why you are where you are. I firmly believe in some way I was put in all those jobs, including the ones that I really didn't care for much, so I could learn things. And one of the things I learned was a lot about the media business. So along with hopefully my training and just doing it so long, I'm decent on mic, but I'm really good at the media business. So I think I always joke that my strength is my mediocrity. I mean, Jimmy Church is a better broadcaster than I am. And somebody else I worked with might have been a better ad salesperson than I was. And somebody else might be a better tech person than I am. I'm sure they are. But and this is a little bit of a brag, is I'm one of the few people I know who can do all of it kind of competently.
You're right,
and
though.
that's my superpower.
It is the journey. Did you ever find yourself when you're in the business side of things and you're walking down the halls and walking past studios, maybe listening to the broadcast come through, that you know what, man, he sucks.
Actually, it was the opposite. It was the opposite. And actually, it helped me immensely because I studied these people and I got to work with some great people. There might have been a few people I'm like, yeah, there were a couple that I was, it's like he's in where he is because of who he knows or whatever. And I would say that was the case a few times. But most of the time, I'm like, dang, these guys are good and these women are good. And it was funny. I was studying for this and I didn't even realize it because I paid attention to everything. When I worked in radio, I was interested in how the traffic department worked. I was interested in how engineering worked. I would go in with the production manager and spend way too much time as a salesperson shooting the breeze and watching him do commercials and edit in Cool Edit Pro at the time or whatever it was. Or before that, when I first started, Jimmy, it was tape and razor blades in the early 90s.
I love those.
And I tried that once or twice, and thank God that went away. But the point is that I actually took it the other way. I'm going to study these people. And I did that, but I didn't know what I was studying for. And that goes back to the journey, because you are put in situations, and at the time you may think, well, this is a waste of my time. But you don't know what's coming down the road, where that waste of time turns out to be one of the most important learning opportunities you ever had. And I would say that to young people. I mean, I don't like talking about myself like, oh, I'm such a great person or anything. I'm not. I'm like a mid-tier podcaster, okay? But I have learned a few things. And the one thing I've learned, and again, I would say this to young people, patience. You don't come out fully baked. And I always had a hard time with that. I thought I should be, number one with a bullet right away.
It's funny you mentioned Cool Edit Pro and what a revelation that was in that era, which 1995 or so, and the transition from tape to digital audio. And now check this out. This is a true story, 100%. I could make up stuff in this story. It wouldn't make it better. It's that cool. So I'm going to AES, right, in Las Vegas, the Audio Engineering Society convention. Might have been even CES, one of the two. And I'm by myself, and I'm walking in the side door of the convention. And right there is this little tiny booth. Nobody at it. Little 6-foot booth. And there's a sign above it. Cool Edit, right? Now think about this. So I stop and I go up and there's a guy there. I said, what's Cool Edit? It's a 2-channel stereo digital editor. What's that? Right? Well, let me tell you about it. And so I went through, I got a floppy disk of the demo. And his name was Bob Ellison. And Bob and I, he was the owner of Cool Edit Pro. And at that time, it was a 2-person company, right? That's it. And we just became friends, and we worked together over the years. And we ended up, I was working for Alesis at the time, and we brought Cool Edit into the Alesis and would, hand out, ship his products with it and stuff. And I became really good friends with him. And Cool Edit went from 2 to 8 tracks, right, to 24 tracks, and all the way through that development process. Bob and I were on the phones, and I would go to his offices. I remember, this is true. Now, Cool Edit today is Adobe Audition. That's how big it got. And so, so I'm going to his company, and at that time, it was in the basement of this office building. He had like a marketing person, somebody else. It was like 5 people. And that's it, and going through and just excited about the future. And then one day I went to call him up, and I needed something or whatever, and he doesn't return my call. And then it was like I sent him angrier and angrier emails. Okay, man, that's it. This is the last email I'm ever sending you, right? And that kind of stuff. And then he finally goes, man, we were in a 30-day quiet period. I sold the company to Adobe. And I went, oh, wow. But I watched the whole thing right out. And Bob Ellison, man, what a great dude. Cool Edit. It's a little booth, man. This big.
I love it. I love it. Somebody had a vision, they made it work. And that's the thing. I'm what I like to call myself a compassionate capitalist, because again, I think you should treat people well. And if you have people working for you, you should treat them well. In fact, one of my radio station owners that I work for was that kind of guy. And he's probably approaching 90, and he's still working. I actually went to work for a classical radio station, and he basically co-founded the station in 1962. And, he's ended up getting other stations and sold, but he made sure this station stayed classical and donated it, and it did very well, but also was a great guy and great to his employees. And that was kind of the model for me. I want to be someone who, provides my audience a service, makes a living, and does right by people, and maybe brings a little bit of information and entertainment to light. I want it to be truly a win-win-win, where somebody, if they listen for free, they feel great about it. If they're a member of my Plus Club, they feel great about it. If they don't feel great about it, let's get you out of it. Let's get you, a refund or whatever you need. I'm all about customer service, but I also want to be successful. I think to me, that's the model. Like your friend, he worked hard. He created something that was spectacular, and he saw the fruits of it. I think that's fantastic.
Which now is truly the industry standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Adobe Audition, Cool Edit Pro, Adobe Audition. Every newsroom, every radio station in the country, that's what they use. And they use it because it's great. Well, okay, so when did you always have, and I keep going back to, when you're walking the halls on the business side of things,
mm-hmm.
Did you always think about the paranormal and that type of footprint in the media market, that there was room for this?
No, I never thought about it until I came up with the idea of doing a podcast. What happened was I used to listen to, like KFI would stream. And some things like it really started. I'll tell you how it started. Leo Laporte, the great tech journalist.
Yeah, man, I love Leo.
And he's fantastic. And kind of like a model for kind of a little bit what I do, although I do it on a much smaller scale than he does. But and it's about ghosts and Bigfoot. But but the point being that I started listening to some of his talk shows. He said, I'm doing this new thing called podcasting. And this is early 2005, I think. So I think at that time you had to download a program called Juice and then hook up your MP3 player. It was before Apple even had it. And then Apple got on the iPod summer of 2005. And like within a month or two, I started my podcast. But you asked about the paranormal. I was always fascinated by the paranormal anytime through my whole life. And I never knew podcasting didn't exist. It wasn't even on my radar. But I was always interested in it. Listened to Art Bell like so many in the 90s. I go in a bookstore, I go in a library, and that would be one of my must-hit sections, And when I went to start podcasting in 2005, because I said, I want to use or try to hone some of these broadcasting skills, if it's just for fun, just for my own amusement. I said, well, what can I do a show on? What really interests me and might interest other people.
Did you have a list?
Well, a mental list. I didn't write it down, but sports, I'm not going to add anything on sports. There's people, there know tons more on sports than I ever know. Can't do music because you can't do any ASCAP or BMI music, which happens to still be the case and is still ridiculous. And politics, you know what? I have my beliefs, but just like on my shows, I don't want to argue with people. I'm the kind of person who says, my best friend and I have very different political beliefs. I remember I used to say A and he'd say B, and I'd say, well, Rich, you're full of crap. And he'd say, Jim, you're full of crap. And then we would say, let's go have a beer. And, we might disagree about things, but we're still, the best of friends. And that's kind of the way I operate. That's kind of old fashioned these days. But the point being, I didn't want to do politics. I didn't want to be in conflict, and I didn't think I could add anything. And I looked around and I said, there aren't many paranormal podcasts, which seems amazing.
Yeah, right.
And as far as I can tell, Jimmy, now I always say this, I could be wrong, but as best I can tell, I have the longest continuously running paranormal podcast on the internet, the Paranormal Podcast. That's how early it was I got that name, and I ended up trademarking it. But they always say, well, don't put podcast in your name. And I'm like, well, I did it in 2005, so I think I'm going to keep it. But the point being, it's the longest continuously running paranormal podcast, as best I can tell. Because Dave Schrader started a few months later, and there were other people that started 3, 4, 5, 6 months later. But I think I got that one, which is kind of neat.
I think you can wear that crown. This is my memory. Back then, and I was making the changes. I knew where I was going. I decided to go into sports because I thought that would be the easiest road in to radio. I wasn't podcast, I wasn't doing that yet. And then I would shift gears later, get my foot in the door in sports, and then become the paranormal guy or the UFO guy. That was my plan. And actually, that's what I did, and it worked. But the point to all of that is I would go back and listen to your stuff, and I would listen to Schrader too back in the day. Very impressed. But I would listen to you and go, he's got it. Right? Jim Harold's got this delivery. He's got this style. And I really appreciate what he's doing. And I did. I studied Dan Patrick and Jim Rome and of course, Art Bell and Don Imus, whatever. I was listening to everybody that was on the radio back then, and Rush, and listen to their tempo. Listen to how they interviewed people, how they answered questions. What the style was. And unlike you, I was frustrated. I would go, no. I would have asked that question differently. Making mental notes that this was the road I was going on. And then it was the tone and who had the tone. And I would go back and listen to you. And I still, to this day, I would listen to your delivery, like right now on the show, and go, man, you know what? Jim's got it. Did you have that voice, always growing up? Is this something that you fine-tuned?
No, I don't think I've got that great of a voice. I think of people who's got a great big booming voice like you and Art Bell had and people like that. Those are the people. And my one boss, who I think he won an award for most beautiful voice in America, like in the 50s. The one radio station owner I was telling you about. Those are the people who have the great voices. I just do the best I can with what I've got. Somebody called me the Bob Ross of the paranormal.
It's not bad. Do you hear nails on the chalkboard? Because I can't listen to myself.
Sometimes, especially when it's like older stuff. Not as much now. But I'll tell you what I do because I'm like you. I've always been a student, even when I was a kid, of great broadcasters. Going way back, we're talking Paul Harvey, Good Day, Bob Barker and things. And the other day I was doing an intro for a Campfire thing, and I did something like this. I'm like, Mabel's on the line and she loves the Campfire, and we love to hear that. And I was like, I just did Bob Barker.
You know who?
I do it with Kasem too. Kasem.
You read my mind.
Yeah, I'm like, and now she's on the line to tell us her story. It's like, oh, I shouldn't. It's ingrained.
When going through the 70s and listening to the radio like we all did, the one guy that I thought was the shiz nickel that was just different from it was Casey Kasem. And I just thought he was as smooth as butter. And not that I would ever emulate, but he had this smoothness and he could turn anything into a positive thought. Yeah. And that's what I really appreciated about Casey Kasem. He made you his friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important. It's, Jimmy, some of the most gratifying, and I get some of them. I just got one today. I won't go into specifics because it's very personal. But when you do what we do, even if like I'm a mid-tier podcaster, so I'm not reaching the people that a George Norrie reaches, or I'm not reaching the people that a Casey Kasem reach, but I reach some people. And to those people, there's a few people who it's really important to, and you don't know, maybe somebody's alone. Maybe somebody's, dealing with something, and listening to the shows gives them a few minutes of rest, or maybe something you say, triggers something with them. And I think you've got to always keep that in mind, that kind of that old school, remember when radio was supposed to be in the public service? I think you got to think about that a little bit, and you got to be careful what you say, and you've also got to try to be a friend. And I really appreciate my listeners. They are responsible for allowing me to do this really cool job. So I really do want to be friends with them in the sense that I want to provide them something that they will find entertaining, informative, and valuable to my. And I know a lot of times through my life when I've been alone, my best friend was a television or a radio. And having those people, I had my times when I was alone. And having those people to turn to meant a lot. And I think that in what we do, it can mean much the same for people.
Do you feel that some of the best advice that you can give to somebody that wants this career and wants to do this is, no matter what, just be yourself? You're going to fight it, right? You're going to fight. You're going to want to be Casey Kasem or Howard Stern, right? You're going to want to be a Jim Harold. Be yourself.
Yeah.
The hard lesson that I learned from this, I was with a very, very big talent agent that represented, still does, the biggest names in this industry. Okay. Right. Okay. All right. So he kind of takes me under his wing, and we go to this get together in Los Angeles, and I meet, I'm not going to say who, I meet a very, especially at that time, a very big personality, right? Very, very big. And the person that I met, unkempt, greasy, smelled of like red meat and whiskey, right? I don't know how to explain it, but had a personality that was not what was on the radio. A very aggressive, kind of nasty thing. And I meet, and I'm like, wait a minute. I was in love with this person on the radio. Mm-hmm. And the person that I'm meeting right now, the radio's an act. Right now, that right there was the lesson that I learned. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be two different people. You're living two different lives, right?
No, that's true.
Be yourself. You hang out with me in person, It's this guy. It's this this abrasive doofus is who you're going to meet in life. And I'm not talking down about. I'm just saying this is just who I am.
Yeah.
Is that the best advice you can give to somebody?
I think it's very good advice, because the thing is that it's hard to put up a front. I mean, to constantly do that, I mean, I will say, I on the air, I am squeaky clean. I'm walking through the house, I stub my toe. I probably have some choice words like most people. But in general, kind of what you see is what you get. And if you're kind of like, boy, that nerdy guy, he doesn't interest me at all. It's like, well, that's okay. But that's who I am. And so I try to stay true to that. Absolutely. And I think that's good advice, because I think, what I've heard is that don't try to be a version of somebody else. Try to be the best version of yourself, because there's only one you. There's already a Casey Kasem or a Howard Stern or a Rush Limbaugh or whoever it might be, but there's only one you. So that's your ticket. Then you just got to figure out how to make the most of who you are.
I had a friend. He decides he's going to do podcast live streaming, whatever, doesn't matter. This is a few years ago, and he goes, "Okay, man. So I've taped my first show. This is somebody that I'd love to hang out with, Jim. He's great." Great storyteller, just great experiences. Awesome person, fun, right? And he sends me, his first podcast, his first thing. And it was the exact opposite of who we are. And so today, right? I was like, wait, what? Right? And I'm listening. It was painful. And he couldn't wait to hear back from me. I called him up. I said, man, what are you doing? Well, what are you talking about? And he spent all this time, this money, and all this effort. So, dude, just be yourself. The person that I go out to dinner with, man. Be that guy. What? I kind of broke his heart, right? I get that. A week later, sends me the new podcast. So on today's show, I was like, see, that wasn't that hard. This is wonderful, and he's still doing it to this day, and he's doing great. But the first run through, and that's you don't want an act, right? You don't want an act. You don't want a sideshow. Just be yourself.
No, I agree. And the thing is that I feel now what I do is so much a part of who I am that there is no division. Like I just.
Does it make is it too easy?
No, I don't think I wouldn't say it's easy. I work my butt off, as I know you do too.
You don't stress, right?
No, I mean, in terms of doing on-air stuff, that's at this point, that is the easier part. Not that it can't be improved. It can always be improved. I'll listen to myself back and say, okay, stop saying, stop saying, it still drives me crazy. I do that kind of stuff from time to time. I admire people who eliminate those crutch words out of their vocabulary. I think that's a key broadcasting skill that I still haven't learned. But the point is that that's probably, and I think that's sometimes what people don't understand. They say, well, how can you make a living doing this? Especially people who don't watch the shows or listen to the shows, and they wonder how I do it. And they're kind of like, what's going on? Does he have a trust fund or something? Or he doesn't work. And then I'll meet people who will say, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. And you know what? There have been people, there are these two people, Christine and Em from And That's Why We Drink. They were fans of my show. They started a podcast, and guess what? They way surpassed me. They tour. They have like 25 city things, and they started off as fans of mine. And God bless them. Good for them. And they've always been nice, and they've never forgotten me. They always plug my show, which I appreciate. And they've been guests, and we're friendly, and it's great. But the point is that it can be done if you take it seriously and you work hard. I would never tell anybody not to start a podcast, not to start a YouTube channel, whatever it might be. I say, go for it. But don't think you're just turning on a mic and it's just gonna, it's gonna skyrocket. Christine and Em, worked incredibly to make that happen. I've worked incredibly to make the little bit that's happened with me happen. I know you've worked very hard. So the point is, it can be done, but don't get into your head that I'm just going to start a podcast. It took me 7 years. 7 years before I went full time. I'm slow. What can I say? But but 7 years.
7 years, and just like anything else, it's sweat equity. And nobody else is going to do it for you, and when you find that out, you have to have a work ethic, right? But I want to go back to your paranormal decision. We need to take a break here in a few minutes. We don't have to do it now. I don't run on the clock anymore. So, my studio clock is whatever I make it today. When you make those decisions and you've got the work ethic and you've got it applied and things are working, was paranormal the right decision? Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Was it a bliss issue?
I wanted to podcast on something that really interested me.
Right.
I knew if I did a podcast on something that I had no or just a passing interest in, it wouldn't last and I wouldn't stick with it. And the thing was, people say, oh, you picked the paranormal because the TV shows were starting about that time and it was getting hot. And it's like, that had absolutely nothing to do with it. It was simply because again, when I start podcasting, if somebody would have told me that you're going to be able to make a living at this for at least 10 years, because, I'm not one to say, hey, anything can happen. We got a crazy economy. Things can happen with health. I mean, so far so good, but I'm always got my head on a swivel and always know it could all go away. But my point is, if somebody told me you could make a living for at least 10 years doing this, I'd say you are joking. There is no way with this podcasting thing. So it was primarily, okay, I want to do this podcasting thing because I love broadcasting and I can't do it professionally. And that was, well, what am I going to do it on? And it was something that intensely interested me. And for me, the paranormal, now you say the paranormal, everybody says, oh, ghosts. Yeah, that's one of about 72 different things, but I lump into it unsolved mystery type stuff, Bermuda Triangle, UFOs, alien abduction, ghosts, near-death experiences, Coral Castle, cryptids, Bigfoot, Nessie, very much like In Search Of, where it wasn't just about ghosts, it was about a whole host of things. I'm very old school with that, and I get so annoyed when people say, oh, you do the paranormal, you have a ghost show. Mm. It's like, even Campfire, it's not just a ghost show. It's a supernatural Fortean show, and ghosts happen to be a part of it.
It never ends. You will never run out of material. Jim, let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, the one and only Jim Harold, the Paranormal Podcast, amongst other, of course, Campfire. And right now we're going to take a quick break. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below. We'll be right back. Check out Billy Carson's Forbidden Knowledge. ForbiddenKnowledge.com or ForbiddenKnowledge.tv, where you can get access to over 6,000 videos, movies, TV series, exclusive documentaries like The Black Knight Satellite. You can do it all for just $7.77 per month or $77 per year after the 3-day trial, which is also totally free to check out. It's all simple to do. Billy Carson is the best. It's simple. ForbiddenKnowledge.com or ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's the number 4BK. I will be hosting and emceeing the Conscious Life Expo this February 10th through the 13th at the LAX Hilton right here in Los Angeles, California. 200 speakers, including Linda Moulton Howe, Bashar, Deborah King, George Norrie, Daniel Sheehan, Scott Walter Johnstone, and David Wolf. Over 200 vendors, special events. This is the biggest event of its kind on planet Earth. You've got to come and hang out with all of us. Tickets and info at ConsciousLifeExpo.com. The links are below. On Saturday, April 1st, that's right, April Fool's Day 2023, I will be hosting the Parapod Festival at the Hyatt Regency right here in Valencia, California. It's a live one-day podcast awards. It's a film festival. It's a full-on media event. We're going to have sky watching. There's going to be a Lifetime Achievement Award presented to Linda Moulton Howe. Right now, you can submit your podcast, your film, your TV series, any of your paranormal media for consideration. You can do all of that on the links below. For info and tickets, go to parapodfilmfest.com. That's parapodfilmfest.com. April 7th through the 14th, 2023, I'll be hosting and presenting on the Hidden Secrets Seminar at Sea Cruise. From Los Angeles to the Mexican Riviera on the Navigator of the Seas. That's right, up top, a giant water slide. You've got to check out the Navigator of the Seas. It's amazing. We've got Scott Walter, Adam Apollo, Nick Pope, Brad Olson, Vivian Chauvet, Jason Shurka, Robert Grant, Ruben Langdon, and another 12 amazing speakers and presenters. It's all simple to do. Just visit divinetravels.com/Hidden Secrets 2023. You know you want to go on a cruise with me. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest, Jim Harold. And, Jim, you're with us tonight. Very special night. Tonight, it's the end of our 9th year, 9th anniversary. Tomorrow, we start our 10th year of Fade to Black. I'm still humbled and honored just to suggest something like that. But and here you are tonight with us on this very special night. It makes it really cool for me. And speaking of that, there's a transition. So, and I'm talking about from audio to video, right? Mm-hmm. When you started out, how long did you run with audio only?
Well, first of all, let me say happy anniversary and congratulations. That's to be commended, and I know that you've had the live element going forever. So really, super kudos to that, because that's a whole new aspect to then just recording something, even if it's, quote, live to tape, it's a different thing. So kudos to you. So you were asking about audio to video. Well, the interesting thing is that I've not really been happy with my video efforts, but I was very early on in the video ball game for a while. I did a show called The Paranormal Report, a video podcast. I think we did almost 200 episodes of that, and that was a video podcast. I originally did it with the first host, and then more recently with Micah Hanks.
Okay, what year? What year are we talking?
Gosh, I don't even know. It must have been like 2010, 2011.
Okay.
And that was video. And we did video clips. And I got away from that. I think the reason I stopped doing that video show was because, we would fully credit and cobble together these clips from very early YouTube and different things. But I like to feel very confident in what I'm presenting. And a lot of the quality of the video clips that I saw were either faked or they weren't that compelling to me. So I got away from video about 2 or 3 years ago and loved doing the show with Micah. He's fantastic, and we remain friends, and we're going on a cruise together here with some folks coming up in the spring as well. And just did a thing with the Great Astonishing Legends people the other night. So Mike and I are in constant contact, which is great. So about 3 years ago, I started getting in on video again, kind of fits and starts. And really next year, I want to get back to doing video because we've got, a set and we've got cameras and equipment and all this stuff. So I want to do a better job on video. And that's somewhere where I think, Jimmy, there's a lot of room for me for improvement. And really making that connection with the audience that I make via audio. And I think it's doable, but I think I need to do a better job at it.
I started to say I love radio, right? As a listener, listening in my car, listening at home, listening late at night, grew up listening AM radio. You remember that white plug?
I do. I had one. I used to listen to the CBS Radio Mystery Theater when I was a little kid with that little cream-colored.
Yeah.
People of a certain age will know exactly what we're talking about.
And
I can see it now.
You only got one.
That's right. It came with it. You lose that, you're out of luck.
And the theater of the mind, going back to Long John Neville, right?
WOR. He was really the originator.
He was the originator, and great. It was about the shadow knows, all that stuff where you're building this up in your mind, which is what. For me, with Campfire, you and not only your stuff, but some of the stuff that came later, creepy pasta,
right,
and things where you are painting your own picture.
Oh yeah.
So that's what I always wanted to do. This right here, what we're doing now, this is the world that we live in today. So it's not ultimately what I want to do. I'd rather just have the audio be the theater, and I think that's the most powerful thing when you're talking about these subjects, and you do it really, really well. But it's the theater of the mind, right?
I agree, and I will say, to me, it's like if somebody said pick one. Regardless of popularity or not, let's say you can be equally popular in video or equally popular in audio. Pick one. I pick audio.
Yeah,
so
me too.
We're on the same page with that. But my training was in television, so I still have. It's kind of like, how you have your favorite ice cream and then you have like your second favorite ice cream, and if you had to pick between the two. You might pick Rocky Road over vanilla, but you'd hate to give up vanilla. So I want to do both. I mean, if I have to pick one and the priority, and that's what's really happened, Jimmy, with me and video. As I shared with you before, we moved about 1.5 years ago, and anybody that does that knows, oh, what a headache that is. You move a house you live in 25 years with a whole family. That uprooted everything for 6 months. A lot of things happened, but the one thing that didn't happen was I never missed an audio show. One of the things I'm most proud of is we have our Plus Club. And every month, we promise the Plus Club members we will get them 8 bonus episodes a month. Now, they're 30 minutes apiece. They're not real long shows, but 8 additional in addition to the back catalog they get access to, okay? So I popped there a little bit. Sorry about that. I'm ordered a windscreen for this. Yeah, I popped there. That annoys me. See, that annoys me. I have the windscreen on order because it's been bothering me. But anyway, the point is, the one thing that I've never missed since February of 2011, including the death of my mom, my wife having cancer, all these, and thank God she's in great shape now. Everything worked out fine. She had thyroid cancer, but a lot of stuff when you have 2 kids, you're married, you have elderly parents, a lot of stuff happens at this time in our kind of age, our stage of life. Now, this could change, something horrible could happen, but since February of 2011, I've never missed those 8 extra episodes a month. Not 1 month. Not 1 month. Audio is never missed. I may occasionally take an episode off. I think the Paranormal Podcast is taking the first episode off the first week of January for like a year. But we don't miss with audio. And that's the first priority. And that's why something had to go and something was video. Long-winded answer.
Well, no, there's something to be said about that, and how I understood. I'm saying this for the audience, not for me. In that during the week, Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday, I'm doing this. And then on the weekends, I'm over doing coast to coast. And I did that for 6, almost 7 years. And coast to coast is audio only, right? So I'm able to go in there and I'm not thinking about the size of the audience or anything else or the nice studio. No, it's just me and this microphone, right? That's it. That's all I have to deal with. And my mind would work differently. And I'd go back to fade to black. Now I've got to make sure I wear a different shirt every day. I got to make sure that I've shaved. I got to make sure that I brush my teeth. I got to make sure that I don't pick my nose. I got to make sure that my hair is right. I got to make sure all the things that have nothing to do with the show, right? And your mind is in other places. So for the audience, I really felt that in a weird way they're getting cheated. Like they're getting my best over on Coast because I don't have to think about this stuff. And then over on Fade to Black, I'm concerned about, are these lights right? Are they? And so what I decided to do was not look at this, right? I don't care about my background. I don't care if I've shaved. I don't care if I wear the same shirt 2 days in a row. I don't care what I look like. I care about my guest and this microphone. And I've tried to keep that into the theater of the mind aspect of this. And so we run 2 versions of the show. One is audio, one is video. Mm-hmm. You get to take your pick. So, and I try not to run graphics. If I run a video, here's the thing. And you have the same issue, right, with what you do. If you run a video, a picture, an image, or something that supports the show, or something that somebody has sent you a story, and maybe they've drawn a picture of it, right, of the entity that they've seen. And right. If somebody's listening to the audio version of that, or they're not watching, they're listening.
No, you're right.
They get cheated on that.
I've kind of made a similar decision in the sense that whatever I do next year in video, for the most part, is probably going to be video only. In other words, I'm not going to have a audio version of it. So because for example, I've got all the programs. I've got the Stream Deck here with 32 buttons. I can live switch a show, stuff that you used to have a satellite truck for. Right. StreamYard, I like StreamYard. I use another program, Ecamm. You can have stuff flying in. You can make it look almost like network television. But to your point, when you're pushing all those buttons and you're like, oh, did that little thing, that little animation go across or wherever it was, you're not thinking about the content. You're not thinking about the guest. You're not thinking about the subject. You're thinking about, oh, did that little... did that little thing go across that little scroll? Did that go across? What I find it's really useful for, we do these live parties. We did one for Halloween, and we had about 3,000 people who watched it, and not huge numbers by YouTube standards. And then we're going to do one this Saturday. If anybody wants to check it out, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, and it's going to be, actually my wife and kids come on, and we have trivia and stuff, and that's fun. But that's different because we are doing it in such a way that we're having a party, and we may touch on some paranormal topics and things, but it's more of a community building thing. And I think that that's probably, for me, a better use of video, and I'm going to maybe do some of that next year on a more regular basis. And that's why I'm looking at it, not doing the Paranormal podcast, a video version, not doing a video version of Campfire, but maybe doing something else. And we'll see where it goes. But I definitely plan on doing more video next year.
What do you think? Let me scroll back so I can get this accurate here. Hold on for a second. That's one of the things I love about this audience is the engagement. The difficult part about all this engagement is finding
the comments.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been there.
And this is from Michael. Michael says, what will be the next big thing? What's going to be bigger than podcast? And I think that's here. I'll put this. Since did you not see it, Jim? There you go.
I see it now. Yeah.
Okay. Michael, you see it now. Yeah. There was a time when CDs weren't around. Now
Right.
CDs are gone, right? There was a
Yeah.
time when there were no DVDs. There was a
Right.
time when there was no VHS.
Right.
All that stuff is come and gone. There was a time when there wasn't a YouTube. There was a time before live streaming when we thought that DirecTV and cable was as big.
Yeah, that was the apex. Yes.
That was the apex. We've certainly moved on from that. What would be the next big thing?
Well, one thing that I think, and it may not be in time for us because they really got to get the technology right. And I still don't think it's right if you look at things like Meta and things. I think that virtual reality, first of all, I think podcasting in some form will continue, just like radio will continue. But that doesn't mean there could be other additive things. And I do think it's interesting, you know, for example, I do think there's something unique about being face-to-face. I know during your break there, you were talking about a lot of great conferences you're doing. But I think there is an opportunity with something like virtual reality to do something eventually that may not be quite like being there, but it'll be better than Zoom. And I think those kind of possibilities will be very interesting. Where I live.
What are you thinking here? Let me.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm thinking. For example, where I live, I moved. We do not have fiber internet. We have cable internet, and I'm complaining to the city, and other people are trying to get fiber internet. But the thing is, you need that bandwidth because eventually, what's going to happen from a business sense, Jimmy, and I know Cisco was working on telepresence years ago. I think it's going to be you walk into a room. It could be a room in your house. You have a table, and it's going to look like the person sitting right next to you. Or I think about the beautiful kind of family implications. It's always better to be face-to-face and together. You can never replace that. But wouldn't it be nice if you can't have that, to have like a living area where it could appear your grandchildren are there or your kids, and you could talk back and forth and communicate with bandwidth and things and the way things are going to increase. I think that will eventually be possible. By extension, it could be virtual events at the next level, not Zoom, not 2 boxes or 16 boxes on a screen, but we're in a room in our home. But whether it's through the display or use of things like holograms, that you will have the sense of being with a group of people. And I think for the paranormal, it would be great to see Linda Moulton Howe speak at one of those if you can't go to a conference. It's not going to be the same, but it would be very nice. It would be great.
So you're saying not 2D, not this.
No.
It would be an environment
yes.
that you would come
like the
in.
holodeck.
And you're right. You would be sitting on a chair next to me.
Right. Now,
wow.
The question is, will that be in time for us, Jimmy? I don't know. But you ask me what I think another possibility for all of this stuff and another extension. And I think that would be, pretty neat, pretty slick.
So somebody could be like your father and could punch me, but it would go through me.
Yeah, basically.
It's cool, but it's kind of creepy at the same time.
Oh yeah. But I think that's where we're headed. But I don't think that it's going to be anything that happens in the next 5 or 10 years. I think we're talking 20, 30 years down the road. By that time, I'll be on Social Security. But if it's still around, that is. But I think it's coming.
Now, once you are aware of ghosts and the possibilities and spirits and the paranormal and that umbrella that you just described, right? Everything is underneath that. In search of, right? You've got everything in front of you.
Yeah.
Because you have that awareness, do you see things now?
I don't see full-bodied apparitions or anything like that, but I have synchronicities. I think I told this story on your show. I may or may not have told it many times. And this is one of those stories that the skeptic would say, mere coincidence. I would say, I think it was Yogi Berra said, too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence. I was on a cruise, a paranormal cruise. Rosemary, Guiley, Micah Hanks, myself, some other people. And we were doing the little talks in the little conference room. And the ship was designed so as the casino was right next to the conference room. So to get to the conference room, you had to go through the casino. And I was about ready to speak, and I had a sore throat. Unfortunately, I had a cold for the whole cruise, which this is pre-COVID. This is when it was really a cold. But I thought, oh, I'll go get some coffee, warm up the old pipes. So I came back, and there was one of these huge machines that had money in it. And it had the claw that came down, and you would grab it and try to grab money. And one of the attendees of the conference, of our group, was there playing it. I had this very intense thought about my late uncle that I told you about earlier, because he was truly like a second dad to me. He really was. And I don't even think my dad would take any kind of offense to that. He really was. And this was 2017. He passed away in 2013. And I had this intense thought of him. I said, oh, I wish he were here, because he used to love to play these things, Jimmy, at like Walmart or wherever, where they would have it with the stuffed toys. He would love to. He'd put $10 in, wouldn't even think about it, to try to win a little stupid 99-cent made in China piece of junk, just for the sport of it. And then he would probably give it to a little kid, you know. So anyway, and plus he liked to like low stakes gamble. You know, he liked to buy scratch off lottery tickets or lotto or play the football pool when he was working. So I thought he would love this. Not only is he getting to play his claw game, but he'd get to, you know, try to win money. Now, of course, he would almost certainly lose, but he'd have a heck of a time. Man, I just wish he were here. Woman walks up to the machine, next to the machine. This guy's playing it. She cups her hand to her mouth and she goes, John. And her husband, whoever John was, walked up. But the thing is, you know who else John was? John was my uncle. Now, some people would say mere coincidence. I say, the pieces were put in place somehow, some way. I don't know if it was God, a higher power, if it was my uncle, guardian angel, that said, you had this deep recognition of love and thought of your uncle, and he's showing the same thing back to you. And that's the way I took it. And that, to me, is a paranormal experience. Now, some people would say, no, you didn't see a ghost.
Why? See, I get it. And probably a large part of this community listening right now, they would go, yeah, okay, cool. I get it. So many don't. They don't pay attention to synchronicities and to coincidences, and they don't wonder about the world, right? That their existence is driving to work and collecting a paycheck and, you know, making sure you've got health insurance and covering the mortgage, and then doing that 5 days a week and then turning around and doing it again. But they're driving to work every day, not thinking about these things and allowing those coincidences, right?
No, I think that's true, but that doesn't mean they're bad people. That just means, you know, life is tough. I mean, you know, you when you're young, you got to figure out your way in your world. You got to make a living. You got to figure out what you're going to do, who your life partner is going to be. You know, it's challenging. Then you get into middle age and, man, it's, you know, you have a spouse, you might have a couple kids, you got a house, you're paying a mortgage on, your boss is giving you a hard time. And then you're elderly and, you know, you're worrying about taking your medicine and you're failing, your health is failing, and your colleagues are passing away, your contemporaries. There's a lot of crap that goes on with life, Jimmy. And I totally get it if somebody doesn't see the need to tap into these things. But I would say this, I think they're missing a lot. They're missing a lot.
Okay. And I'm sorry that I just interrupted the great Jim Harold. But those out there that have dismissed the wonderment about what may be, right, in the world and the universe are now being told on those news broadcasts and social media and wherever they get their information from, that ET is real, right? They're being told that wormholes, right? That big announcement that came out last week, right, from Lawrence Livermore. They've created a wormhole and have teleported stuff through it. That's a really big deal, right? Fusion is now
fusion,
So all of these things that have been out there, truly science fiction, right? Real crazy stuff is now a part of our world. And what do they do with that now?
Well, I think there's a certain, well, first of all, fusion. They literally got more energy out of this small experiment than they put in. They put in 1.0 units and got 1.2 back. I mean, that's crazy. And if it's developed and so forth, they'll have, great potential. But I think you're always, Jimmy, I think that it's like a continuum. Now, if you ask me about belief, I am a believer. I believe in the strange and the unusual. I believe there's something to it. But I always say, if I'm a gas gauge, I'm 3/4 full. I still have a little bit of skepticism about some things. Sometimes I don't necessarily believe everything is a ghost and everything's an alien. But I am strongly on the side of belief. And I think you've got some people who are just on E, and they're never going to change. Example, I interviewed Dr. Michael Shermer, big time skeptic, probably the second best known skeptic. Well, maybe now Neil deGrasse Tyson, James Randi, and then Shermer.
Right.
Great guy. And I really appreciate, nice guy. I love the fact that he would even take time to have a conversation with me, which makes him somewhat unusual. So a good guy. And I think, again, we can agree to disagree. I love that idea. But I said something to him like, well, Dr. Shermer, maybe we agree on many, many cases. Many, many cases could be explained. I agree. That what about the few percent that you absolutely, there is no explanation, everything has been ruled out? And he said, oh, yes, we know they exist, but we put them on a shelf. And it's like, no, take that down and look at it. Examine that. Investigate that. Research that. But the point is, some people have their minds made up, and to use the old cliche, short of the aliens landing on the White House lawn, and maybe not even then, because they just say it was deep faked, they're not going to believe anything. You've got true believers who believe everything all the time. I have lunch with the aliens every third Thursday of the month. And then you've got the people in the middle that stray one way or the other. And I think that there's hope that people who maybe are a little more skeptical, maybe they can move a little bit closer to the middle or a little bit closer to our side. And then on the other hand, maybe some of the people who believe all the things all the time can maybe listen to a Shermer or deGrasse Tyson once in a while and say, well, maybe they've got a point about that one thing. I'm always one for trying to meet in the middle and trying to come to a meeting of the minds and say, here's things we can agree about. Here's things that we disagree about. I hate to talk in absolutes.
Last night I had a dream, and it was very simple, that there was a news story breaking that a drone had filmed a family of Bigfoot. That was the dream, right? And long and drawn out. But it wasn't the Bigfoot for me. That it was how the broadcast and the host was speaking about this. And I woke up this morning and I remember, this was just last night, and I remember the whole thing very vivid today. And I thought to myself, how would the media treat something like that? And for you with the letters and your, and your audience, and one of those things that hangs out there is Bigfoot. The Bigfoot community might be bigger than the ghost community. It might be bigger than the UFO community. It's a big chunk, right? How do you think the media would handle something like that? And the second part of the question is, where do you stand on Bigfoot?
Well, first of all, I would think that the media would tend to poo-poo anything that doesn't fall into their narrative. So they would try to find some way to discredit it or try to laugh at it. What is first they ignore you, then they do this, then they do that, then you win or something. I forget the litany of whatever that is. But the point is I think that the mainstream media would make light of it into the last possible second. Now, on me with Bigfoot, I got to admit, that's probably one that I have the most skepticism about. But I also, for example, I look at that Patterson-Gimlin film after it was from 1967, after it was stabilized. And you look at that and it looks like muscle tone. It does not look like a suit. It looks like actual muscle tone, you see. On the other hand, then I go, well, why haven't they found a body? And then I hear from, well, nature takes care of its own, and you don't usually walk through the woods and find a deer carcass or a bear carcass. So it's really one that, Jimmy, it depends on what day of the week you ask me. I'm not convinced it is, but I'm not convinced it isn't, and I'm open because I do believe there are people of very good will who have given testimony of their experiences. And I very much hate to discredit those or kind of poo-poo those. So, I'm kind of on the fence about it. I know that's a cop-out, but it's the truth.
It's also safe. Keeps you sane. I think that a lot of this, you have to protect yourself.
Yeah. But I mean, there's other topics. Somebody had me on a podcast and they asked me my range of belief on different topics. Ghosts, 9 out of 10. And because I say I don't do 10. Life after death, 9.5 out of 10. UFOs being something more than just man-made, 9. It just depends on the subject, but it's very hard to get me to a 10.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to go down. It's not about me.
Right.
It's about you. But there are certain things that are being portrayed now as a 10 from those that never did that before. And I'm talking about the media or the Pentagon or the military or Avi Loeb at Harvard University. I had Gary Nolan from Stanford on the show this week, and he is, he's about as gifted and as intelligent of any researcher that I know, and he deals with cancers and DNA. That's his thing. That's what he teaches. But he also is interested in UFOs and ET.
And I love that, by the way, not to interrupt, but I love men and women of science who can say, I'm about the scientific method, but I also have an open mind to these subjects and I'm interested in them. I love that.
Well, and what do you think about, somebody, like that is now pushing, and I'm with him, I agree, but I'm worried about the public where you are going all in, that you're at the 10 scale. Right. And, the old quote, scientists never like to go 100%. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's being very courageous. That's for sure. And particularly anybody who's involved with academia, that's like the third rail, right? They talk in politics, Social Security is the third rail. You touch that, you die. And I think in academia, when you talk about these 40 topics, UFOs, ghosts, those kind of things, that it can be death to a career. It can be like touching the third rail. So good for him that he has that courage. And, but the thing is, Jimmy, I have a theory about the whole UFO thing. Do you remember when that report came out? It wasn't this June, but it was the year, but 2021, right?
August.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
August of 2021.
It came out at about 4:00 on a Friday.
It did.
Coincidentally, today, the JFK files came out around 4:00 on a Friday. where do you put news that you want to bury?
At 4:00 on a Friday.
Thank you.
You're taught that in school, by the way.
Yes, I took journalism class. I know how to bury a story.
That in school. That's right.
Yeah. So my point is that as much as we want to think that there's going to be disclosure, as much as we see the government maybe opening up, I still believe they're very powerful people who don't want the truth out about UFOs. So I think a lot of people are very optimistic that, okay, it's going to come out now. It's coming out now. They're getting ready to tell us. They're going to tell us. They're dripping disclosure. And I'm like, are you sure they're going to tell us? Are you sure that this just is because their hand was forced because the New York Times released it and they had to say something? So I'm not convinced that the government will. There are people like Rubio's one, for example, who I think very much wants to get the truth out there. That's on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, Harry Reid was someone who wanted to get the truth out there.
You got Senator Gillibrand. And
that's what I'm saying. It's not a partisan thing.
Right.
But I think those people are in the minority. And I really worry. It's kind of like, and it's happened before, like the cat started to come out of the bag and then they have the Condon Commission or they have Project Blue Book. Let's tighten this thing back down. I could see that happening again. I mean, I hope that it can't because now we have the internet and there's a lot more outlets and blah, blah, blah. I hope I'm wrong, but I worry about that.
Is it that easy to bury something these days? You've been in media for a long time, and I
don't think it's as easy, but I think they could still do it.
I think it's easier to bury.
Oh, okay. Well, that's true because it just you release it and it gets lost in the tidal wave of everything else. It's like hiding in plain sight.
Well, I don't want to sound old, but you're going to agree with me on this. There was a day when we had 3 TV channels, 4 if you had a really good antenna, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was it. And your newspaper came in the morning. Time magazine came once a week, right? That was it.
Yep.
Today, literally, without exaggeration, you have got 1 million streaming ideas. News outlets, podcasts, streaming. It's not just one thing, and you have access to every single radio and television station around the world instantly. So, is it easier to bury something today? Absolutely.
No, that's a great point. I wasn't thinking of it that way, but that's absolutely valid point because you could just say, "Oh, that's just so much noise,"
and you're trying to get somebody's attention. Where they, in a day, how many times can you divide up your brain into different news stories? So you remember, right, the 24-hour news cycle. It seems like, it's
now it's 24 minutes.
Well, I'd say 24 seconds, right? Where you have the power, right? You've got, that's a really good example, actually. But it is Twitter and influencers and the ability to change minds in nanoseconds. So trying to get somebody's attention on a specific target and subject, it takes a lot of work today. So if you want something buried, I think it's pretty easy. Yeah,
that's a great point. I now that I think about it, you're absolutely right. No, that makes all the sense in the world.
And to that end, I just have to ask you, have you seen a UFO?
Not what we would traditionally think of as a UFO in the sense of something that could be a craft. Now, must have been the late 90s, my wife and I, had been married. We were driving down a main road in the Cleveland area, suburb of Cleveland, and we looked up and there was a green fireball in the sky. And we were listening to AM talk radio. You'd be very proud of us. We were listening to AM talk radio, and the top guy in Cleveland was on the station. His name's Mike. It was Mike Trevisano. He's passed since a year or so ago. And somebody called in and said, "I'm on so-and-so road, and I just saw a huge green fireball in the sky." And he's like, "You're drunk." And then he was about ready to hit the top of the hour, and that was it. Never heard about it again. I fully believe that was some kind of meteorite or space junk or something. But if we've got time, I got to get in my parents' UFO story. That was the other story I told you about.
Okay.
Because this is a UFO story. And again, you had to know my mom. She was from West Virginia, and she told it how it was. So anyway, I was born in 69. So this was probably about 1970. We were visiting my grandparents in West Virginia. It was a coal mining town. So anyway, my mom and dad decided they were going to, this was in the evening, it was dark, they were going to drive out to a secluded spot. Now, Jimmy, I don't want to know why, but they were driving off to a secluded spot. And they left little Jimmy, little Jimmy's what they used to call me, little Jimmy. They left me with grandma. So anyway, they went out to this secluded spot, don't want to know why. And you know rural areas, no street lights, no lights whatsoever. Pitch black dark. My dad said, my mom said it too, light in the sky for about 30 to 60 seconds. So bright you could read the numbers on the speedometer in a 68 Buick LeSabre. You remember the old cars that used to actually have clocks with hands on them. They have one of those. They could read that. Then my dad said he looked to his left out the driver's side window, and the way he described it was there was a man with a welding mask with his hand held out. At that point, my mom never saw the guy with the welding mask.
Only your dad
Quote,
did.
yeah, quote, welding mask. So then they said, let's get out of here. So my dad gets out of there, and he's going down this country road. I don't even know if it was paved. And then my mom said, I saw the biggest birds I ever seen in my life up on the bank. They had huge wingspans. And then they came home, and they fully expected the next day it would be reported on the news or something, and they never heard another thing about it again. Now, I had kind of an aha moment when I was interviewing Mike Cleland. He does the book The Messengers, and there was a sequel to it, I guess, all about the screen memories and owls. Mm-hmm. And I told him the story and about the parallel with the owls and the large birds. And who knows, maybe the man in a welding mask was either an interpretation by my dad, or the birds were some kind of screen memory. And this was not too far removed. I think Silver Bridge was 67, Mothman, 67. Right. This would have been in 70. So generally the same time. A different part of the state. West Virginia, it was southern West Virginia, where the bridge collapsed, the Silver Bridge collapsed, the Mothman, that whole thing happened. Where my dad and mom were, it was near the Maryland border. Different part of the state. But I thought that was interesting. So this, again, Jimmy, just like the story with the ghost with my dad and my uncle, was something I heard as long as I could remember, never changed. Two very salt-of-the-earth people. My mom was the most not metaphysical person you'd ever want to meet. She was what we used to call, back in the day, and I know it's not PC these days, but she was known as a homemaker, a stay-at-home mom. Mm-hmm. And she was from West Virginia, and she never lost her accent, and she told it how it was, by God, and I know what I saw, and I believe every word they said. I don't know what they saw, but they saw something.
A welding mask in the middle of nowhere.
But maybe it was more like some kind of shield. Maybe it's the way he
says welding mask. He says welding mask. I hear spacesuit.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I am sure your father had to think about, who is this guy? How did he get here? Where's his car? Right? I mean, that's what men do, right? And you would have to think about all of those things. That adds to the strangeness, right?
And 1970, before Close Encounters, before Star Wars, there was Star Trek. I mean, there was some stuff in the pop culture, but nothing like we've had in the last 50 years. And my dad always he would watch In Search Of with me. He was always fascinated in this stuff. My mom's like, oh, it's a bunch of bull, She'd be like, the only one I believe in is Jesus, you know? So
last night after the show, you know, I wrapped and I decided to go to my favorite Mexican food drive-through restaurant.
oh, that sounds good.
A family place, and you get steak burrito on your mind, and
Oh man! Now you're making me hungry, Jimmy. This is a problem. You need to teleport me one of those burritos after the show.
So I jump in the car and I head out, and I make the left-hand turn at the joint is on the corner, right? I make this turn, and as I make the left-hand turn, where I have to make a U-turn and then pull into this place, as I make that turn, Jim, as I live and breathe, I'm sitting here. I don't know what it was, but it was cool. This white light might have been like, you know, a meteor, right? Or something else, but it just came straight down in the middle of my windshield, lasted for quite a while, maybe about a second, and then was gone. And now that part of it doesn't matter. What mattered to me was the smile that I had on my face, you know, and I just went, that was cool. And it's gone. Right. That's it. It's over. Nothing exploded. I didn't see anything, but that wasn't the point. It was, what are the odds, right, that I turned because that's just there for a second.
Right.
And that I was able to point my car and enjoy that. And it was incredible. It was incredible. I sat there, turn signals on. I need to take this U-turn. I just sat there and went, man, that was all right.
That is pretty cool. Sometimes I wish I'd see more stuff, although there's some stuff you could see that I wouldn't want to, some of the, you know, are sinister entities and those kind of things. But sometimes I wish I would see more. Now, I did say to someone, well, I've never seen a ghost. And they said, well, how do you know? You know, a ghost doesn't necessarily have to be transparent or translucent. They could walk around and be just like you or me. But at least that I know of. And I kind of wish, because I always joke, because I do believe some people legitimately have psychic powers. And I always joke, I'm about as psychic as a board. But I do wish, you know, I was one of those people who experienced or saw more things. But I guess I have to live vicariously by talking to people who experience these things all the time.
Okay, well, you just said you're 9.5, right? On ET, I think it was ET you gave.
Yeah, I think 9.5. I mean, I'm pretty convinced that it makes it just, to me, it's like the same reason that I believe in God, you know. And God for me is pretty much like a 9.9 out of 10, because I don't believe all this just happened by accident. I think there's too many tolerances that have to happen for human life to exist. Well, so I believe in a creator.
What takes you to a 10? What would take you? We'll talk about God in a second. But with ET, what would take you to a 10? I'm at 10, by the way. I'm there.
Yeah, I'm very close. I'm very close.
But something take you there. What pushes you over the finish line?
Maybe a sighting. Maybe a sighting myself, maybe an experience myself. But I mean, it's very close. I mean, I'm pretty much convinced. I mean, it just to me makes sense. You've got this huge cosmos. And now you even, I remember even when we started, Jimmy, 17 years ago, scientists weren't saying this, but now they come out and say, well, yeah, there probably is life somewhere because there's just too many Earth-like planets. Duh. You know, and the whole thing about, well, they can't get here because the distances are too great. Yeah, with our technology, no. But chances are that they've got our technology beat. You know, it'd be like a caveman saying an iPhone is impossible.
Right.
Well, yeah, for you.
Right.
You know, so no, I'm pretty convinced of I mean, pretty convinced.
Well, when we have, this is what I find so interesting. I don't know if I have seen a ghost. I think my house is completely haunted. I'm a full 10 on that, by the way. Haven't seen anything, hear a lot of things, but there's too much going on here. But science is right there today, Jim. You know, when we have this black hole, the wormhole announcement from last week, that's a really big deal. That puts us, I don't know how close to ET as far as the scale of technology where we're at.
Right.
But we're there, you know, and how close are we to putting Jim Harold, through this thing so he can go to Zeta Reticuli? I'm not so sure, but it's going to happen. It's no longer, part of a science fiction novel, and it's not Frank Herbert and Dune. This is something that we are doing.
And the other thing about ghosts, you bring up ghosts, and, I've heard more than one story. Dave Schrader has a great story about it, and I've had people who have been on the Campfire had similar stories where someone will see a, quote, ghost, but then the ghost will seem just as frightened or surprised or shocked as the person seeing the, quote, ghost. So is the person seeing the ghost a ghost to the ghost?
Yeah.
So that gets into time travel too, or the many worlds theory, the idea that, it's like platters on a hard drive, these parallel worlds spinning.
I was watching the other day, What Dreams May Come, right?
Mm-hmm.
Robin Williams, and what a remarkable piece of work that actually is. But if it kind of goes to what you're saying right there. What's reality to us, and wherever that veil is, well, that's a reality there for whoever's there. So
Right.
Yeah, we just may be peeking in if science and physics continues to what they're doing, which is a fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th dimension. There's stuff living all around us we're not aware of, and we may pop into their existence from time to time, and there's somebody running home to mom and dad going, I saw an alien today, right? I saw a ghost today. It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's one of the things. And I do think there's some kind of connection, and I also think in the paranormal, there's some kind of trickster element sometimes. I think sometimes something's messing with us. I'm not saying that's the case in all the cases. I don't necessarily believe that's the case, but I do believe that's true sometimes. I think there is something that messes with us. I know one thing that freaked me out a little, probably the most freaked out I ever got about a show, and I mentioned her constantly because I just think she was the best, Rosemary Ellen Guiley. And Rosemary would always send me her books, and we would always do interviews. In fact, I counted it up, and I think we did 20 distinct interviews over the years.
Wow.
And anyhow, she had sent me a book on the jinn. So we did an interview on it. And later that day, out of the blue, not out of the blue, he was sick, but we did not know how sick he was, apparently. My uncle that I told you about died. Within 2 weeks, my mom died out of the blue unexpectedly. Now, I kept every Rosemary Ellen Guiley book I ever got. I've got them all. Wouldn't trade them. And except for one. And that one went into the trash bin. Because I'm like, maybe I'm being a little paranoid, a little superstitious here. But, one of the things they say about the jinn, you kind of poke that bear and sometimes it pokes back. And I just thought it was a little close to home. So I got rid of that book.
I was out of town. This is Rosemary Ellen Guiley story you're going to love. So I'm out of town. Phone rings. It's Rosemary, right? Pick it up. What's going on? Hey, Jimmy, listen, man, I'm driving past your house. I have a scrying mirror I want to gift you. Can I stop by? I was like, I'm in New York. Oh, we'll do it next time. Never happened.
No, it's sad.
Yeah.
The thing about her was, and I always tell this story about her, I thought, man, she must really like me. She is so nice to me, and it's really kind of an ego boost. Somebody this great is so nice to me. And then after she passed, I kind of got a little pinprick to my balloon because I found out that she was that way to everybody. Everybody. I never saw, and we both had great guests on our show who have passed. And it is one of the sadder things. Once you've done this for a while, people start to pass. We just lost a great one in Linda Godfrey.
Yes.
But I never, and Linda's had a great outpouring as well, but with Rosemary, I was just amazed at the outpouring she had, and everybody said the same things over and over again. Total professional, prolific, erudite, smart, hardworking, and one of the nicest people in the world, which is probably the most important part.
Jim, thank you so much. What a great conversation tonight. Not one ghost story. Doesn't count.
Well, no, I was going to say my uncle.
Don't count. This is exactly what I wanted to do, and thank you. And now for everybody out there, we've got Soulmate Stories, right? We've got a great TV podcast. We've got JimHarold.com. We've got JimHaroldPlus.com. Where should everybody go? Where is that spot where everything is and they can find out?
Well, it really is JimHarold.com, because some of the shows you mentioned, like Soulmate Stories and the great TV podcast we're not doing these days, you can still listen to them. Got to interview some great people like Richard Hatch and the late Richard Hatch and William Daniels, who was the voice of Kit. Great people on that show, but that one's no longer in production. But if you want to listen to the Paranormal Podcast, Jim Harold's Campfire, those are my two main shows. JimHarold.com. Also on your favorite podcast player, just plug in Jim Harold, and I will be sure to pop up. And if you love spooky stories, Campfire. If you love interviews with authors and experts, the Paranormal Podcast, I hope you check it out. And Jimmy, thank you so much for your time, for being so gracious. It was a lot of fun. I hope I didn't bore people too much with my inside baseball. And I just want to wish you and your entire audience happy holidays, Merry Christmas, happy everything, and Happy New Year. And I hope that everybody has a great holiday season, and even better 2023.
Thank you so much, Jim. You're the absolute very best. Happy holidays to you. And thank you so much for being here tonight, our 9th anniversary, man. And you just made it special for me. Thank you so much.
Happy anniversary. Thank you, Jimmy.
Jim Harold, JimHarold.com. All of his links, we've got them up in social media. Everything is right there. Thank you so much, Jim Harold. He's got the voice. When I grow up, I want to be Jim Harold. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. And that's it. So we're going to head into a weekend that of course, I've got to go and work and do all of that stuff. But I'll see everybody right back here on Monday. Fade to Black is produced by Home J. Palm, Renee Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJC over the Game Changer Network. And this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2022 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I want everybody to have a great, safe, fun, and amazing weekend. Go Beckley Teppy.